Welcome to the Kick Him in the Head podcast. This is our first show of 2024, and it's very, very exciting because today we're doing our first full-on prediction show because 2024, we're looking to get off with a real bang. And as you can see today, I have with me one of the biggest UFC fans that I know. He was there when Dricus landed with his title at OR Tumbo about a week and a half ago. Lucindiso, welcome to the Kick Him in the Head podcast.
My brother, it's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure. Can't wait to get into it. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So tell us a little bit more about yourself in terms of your interest in MMA, UFC, very specifically, before we get into the predictions.
Look, I mean, I'm a mixed martial arts fan. I think more than anything, just because of what it does for a human. You know, a human's mind, body, soul, spirit, physically, mentally. You know, it's one of the most, in my mind, it is the toughest sport in the world because of how much it entails and how much you need to put in to get to being at that competitive level. So I love its intensity, but I also love what it does to the human spirit. And from that, I was able to get into the UFC. I got into the UFC 2015, 2016. Obviously, it's been around way longer, but that's when I started watching the fights, and you know, the rest is history, as they say.
The rest is history, unlike the fights that we're having tonight, which are in the future, and
100%.
we are about to go right into it. Starting with the prelims, there's a fight on the card that for me is very exciting because it brings everything back home. When I say back home, I mean to South Africa, to the EFC, our home promotion. Temba Gorimbo versus Pete Rodriguez. Now, obviously, Temba has been in the UFC for a while. I think it's his second fight in the UFC. He's, I wouldn't say supported, but he is working closely with The Rock. The Rock is a big fan of his because of his story,
man.
having $7 in his bank account. Let's talk about that fight. This is a welterweight bout that's happening in the prelims. How do you see that one going?
Look, obviously, as a South African and African, my bias is obviously going to go towards Temba, you know, because I think he's hungry. He's a hungry fighter. He's got the spotlight, as you say, with what we've seen being posted by The Rock and where he comes from and the sacrifices he's made to get to here. You know, every fighter has a story, and I think we know that. We know the sport is also quite a challenging sport, you know, to put it in a very civil way in terms of what fighters have to go through to get to those stages. And, you know, coming from Zim as well, you know, it's a tough journey. You know, if you think about a Francis Ngannou journey, for example, you know, it reminds me of that. And, you know, it's always those people that have the perseverance in those journeys that always succeed in life because of the self-belief. So I'm going with Temba straight up, 100%. And it will be emphatic. It will be a performance that he wants to show. He's got eyes on him now because of the Rock influence. He's got eyes on him, so he wants to put on a performance. He wants to put on a show for the fans. And I think based on that, he will actually come out victorious. It may be challenging, obviously. You never underestimate any opponent, you know, but I think he wants to put on a show. He wants to put on a performance. He wants to make a name for himself. And therefore, I go with Temba by KO, in fact.
Temba by KO. I like that. Which round?
Second
round. Okay, I like that.
Second.
So he's fighting someone with a 1-0 record, and he's currently 11-4. How do you feel about the fact that they're putting him against someone with far less experience in this situation? Do you feel that that helps him, or do you think that the guy with less experience coming to the UFC for his first fight is going to be hungrier than Temba?
It's actually working to Temba's favor in my eyes. You know, Dana likes to do these sort of things. When he sees a potential star, he likes to create it and see how far he can go with it. We've seen his talks about wanting to do a lot of stuff in Africa. And so this is almost kind of a bit of a setup, I think, where he's trying to look at his catalog and his, you know, of fighters and see what he can do and what he can do to put on a card that will be Africa worthy. And that's why he's getting an inexperienced fighter, in my mind, because he has an opportunity to put on the show. He has an opportunity to showcase his skill sets, and he has an opportunity to have an emphatic win. And I think because of that, I said it. You know, you never underestimate fighters, because he's also got his agenda. He's also got a point to prove. When Dricus went into the UFC, being his first fight into the UFC, he had a point to prove and he won emphatically. So you never underestimate the fighters going in 100%. But I think, I may be a bit biased. I know that by going the Temba route, but I think he'll put up a good fight. I think so, but I think I still stand by my prediction.
So just on your prediction, his opponent, Rodriguez, has a 100% knockout rate. Temba has a 10% knockout rate. So I'm going to go with Temba on submission in the second round because Temba has a 60% submission rate. So I'm going to go Temba as well, but by submission in the second.
So to your stats, he's a better fighter on stand-up, and he's probably got power in those hands. I haven't watched him fight, but it sounds like he's got power in those hands if he's got a 100% KO rate. But again, it's the UFC. It's a completely different platform. It's a completely different standard of fighter, and I see Temba's experience on the feet being superior despite. And that's why I'm going KO, because he wants to have an emphatic victory. Look, my excitement is going towards KO, but if I try to calm down, my second guess is going to be submission, but I still want him to have a performance. And maybe that's why I'm going with my heart on this one and going by KO. And guys who stand up and have those sort of fighters who have a 100% KO rate, want to stand and bang and, want to come forward. And that sort of an experience can put him in a place where he opens himself up for those sort of knockouts. And, if Temba just takes his time, and that's why I'm going KO second round. If he takes his time, makes his reads in the first round, and, I know that guy will probably come with pressure and want to do a KO because, again, he also wants to, put on a show and wants to make a name for himself. If Temba just makes his reads on the first round and then just kind of sees how it goes, I think we'll see some openings in the second round and opportunities for, if not a KO, a major land on him, which then provides an opportunity for submission.
I'm really looking forward to that fight. It's going to be quite exciting to see Temba back in the octagon. Yeah. The other fight on the prelims that we're talking about is meatball spinning elbow Molly McCann versus Diana Belbita, which is a very interesting. I think he's going to strawweight. It's a strawweight bout. Molly's dropped down to go to strawweight for this bout. I think she's on a 2-fight losing streak. So it's quite interesting to see her now changing divisions to go and take on Belbita, who's been doing quite well. I mean, Belbita is on a 2-fight winning streak, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's actually she lost. Yeah, it's 2-fight winning streak. So it's going to be quite a good fight to see these two going against each other. How do you see that fight going? And I mean, we don't have that many women's fights on this fight night. Yeah. I think it's this one and the one in the main card. How do you see this fight going?
Look, it's an interesting one. Again, Dana, providing an opportunity for people to make a name for themselves. Molly McCann is, again, the spinning elbow, multiple knockouts and, in the same camp as Paddy the Baddie, so there's a name there, there's a culture there, there's a following there, there's a passion there, and, because of that, Molly feels the need to get a W. She needs to get a W, and perhaps, dropping down into weight puts her in a position where she has the potential to get bigger quicker between the weight cut and the fight, and therefore puts herself in an advantage where she has more power potentially, and therefore can out-muscle and out-strengthen Diana. On the other side, though, it's a tricky one. It'll be the first time we've seen her cut the weight, and we never know how the weight cut going into a lower division does for fighters. Because, for example, in other instances, fighters because you've taken so much out of your body, you don't have the energy, and you don't have, the bounce that you have to perform at that weight because you've taken so much out of your body. So it could go either way. We'll have to see how she fights into it, but I trusting the science and the camp behind her, because if you think about Paddy the Baddie, like he'll eat and he'll look super fat in a week, and then next week he's looking ultra ripped, because they understand the body. He's probably got a different body, specifically Paddy the Baddie. But where I'm going with the argument is that They understand diets and the science behind getting the right things in your body to be able to perform at a certain level. And I think if you put that into the equation, you'll find that Molly will be in a situation where she can actually perform in that weight class and therefore puts herself in a position to win the fight. And my prediction is a win for Molly. Again, because she's desperate for a win. We've seen the other side of it. If you think about Dan Hooker, who went down and it didn't work out for him, it can go the other way. But I think, Molly's experience, I mean, she's slightly less experienced than Diana. Diana's got a 15 wins, 8 losses. Molly has got 13 wins, 6 losses. So, I mean, there's nothing much in it, but I think Molly's fought on a bigger stage. She's fought, in the UFC, and she's had more lights on her. So the pressure is on her. So she'll want to perform. And that's why I'm going with her for the win.
So something that's a little bit interesting with regards to her wins in the UFC, Belbita's at 2-4. So that doesn't look too good for her. And she has lost to Molly McCann previously, but not in the UFC. Well, in the UFC, she has lost to Molly McCann when McCann was 9-2. So this is actually McCann Belbita 2. So I think that extra fire might be there to say, listen, I know you beat me before, but right now I've got your number and I'm about to take this. So with this fight, it's very tricky to see which way it's going to go. It's going to be very, very interesting.
No, you're right. I mean, Belbita will have a point to prove. She'll want to stand her case. She's fought in this level. Yes, the record doesn't say it's good results, but she's got a point to prove. She's got a big name to take out. If you've got that head, on your platter, Molly McCann head, you are going to be known. People are going to know who is this lady that's taken out, our beloved, Molly McCann. So she's definitely got a point to prove as well. And, the fight's there for her because of what you're saying. But I think, again, going to the point of the odds that are stacking up in Molly's favor, the camp, the people, the pressure, the drive, I go with Molly still.
So I think you're putting me under a little bit of pressure because I was going to go Belbita, but everything you're saying is swaying me in the other direction. I think on this one, I might be inclined to agree with you. Between the fact that Molly, and I was wrong, she's actually I think 4-2 in her last 6. She won her last fight. The 2 before were the 2 that she didn't win. But if I look at that, and if I look at the fact that she's beaten Belbita before, and like you said, Paddy the Baddy's camp, he's just come off a win from Tony Ferguson. So there's a lot of energy, a lot of positive winning energy in that camp. So I think Molly McCann, but by decision. I think I don't see her getting a knockout on this one.
Agreed. The thing about being a fighter that becomes famous quickly is your tapes become infamous. And so, you get studied quite a lot. And so Molly's style does have weaknesses in it, but if she is able to learn from them and actually fight a composed fight, just like Paddy the Baddy did. I mean, he wasn't, when you fought against Tony Ferguson, he was a different fighter. He wasn't the erratic, he kind of had a calm head, had respect to Tony, obviously, and kind of did the job in the rounds. Obviously, there were places where he was in danger, but where I'm going with it, drawing the similarities from the camp, is that Molly needs to get this done. And she can't take too many risks in getting it done. So she'll need a clean, composed, and articulate fight. And that's why it will go by decision. I think I agree with you, because she'll be able to put on that performance, use her experience, and do what she needs to do to get the W.
I agree 100%. Interestingly enough, the other 2 fighters, female fighters, one other fight between Launa Karolina and Julia Storyalenko are actually 2 past opponents of McCann. And I was looking at it, and there's actually 3 women's fights on this card, which are all very interesting where it comes to the strawweight and flyweight divisions. But with that said, we're moving on to the main card, and once again, talking about a women's fight. Viviane Araújo versus Natalia Silva, which is a flyweight bout between number 7 and number 9.
High stakes, high stakes.
High stakes.
In the sense that, every ranked fight for me is high stakes because Dana has the ability to see talent in those sort of fights and shoot you straight up to fighting top tier contenders and even titles. We've seen Dana put people that are 6th ranked. We're not talking UFC 298, for example, but you see the rise of Adricus, for example. He went very quickly up the division to be able to get to where he needs to. And I think when you perform well for Dana, he puts you in a spot where, you kind of carve your own destiny. So that's why I say high stakes. And again, that weight class is in need of diversity in the sense that, we've obviously got, the GOAT, Valentina. And then we've got Alexo, who is, the undisputed champ. We've got a couple of names there that keep on moving around. But we need to see diversity in the division. And that's kind of what Dana is probably looking to do with this fight. That's why it's on the main card, because you're wanting to see other names into the mix and see what they can offer in terms of a variety in the competition. So I think it's a high stake fight, correct?
So high stakes and interesting. Araújo she hasn't got the best current record. In her last, I think, 5 fights, she's got 2 wins, 2 losses, and a bunch of cancelled bouts. So she hasn't been too active since 2021. She recently lost to Alexa Grasso, who's obviously the current champion. Yeah. But if I look at Natalia's record, it is impeccable. In her last 7, she's been undefeated. More than 7, 4. In her last 10, she's been undefeated. So she's been literally on what you would call a tear. The few losses she has in her career, I think, don't really speak to the skill that she has. And if I look at the odds are stacked so heavily in her favor. I mean, we're looking at minus 340 for her. So based on that, it's a very lopsided fight.
I've never seen odds. I don't watch the odds a lot, but that sounds quite heavily stacked, But anyway, yeah.
So I'll be honest, I don't know Natalia Silva. It's my first time really hearing about her. Vivian, I know. But with those odds and with the record that Natalia has, I'm definitely going Natalia Silva on this one because she doesn't have too many big names in her past, unlike Araújo. So it means that most of her wins are probably from another promotion, not necessarily the UFC. But she's got four wins in the UFC, undefeated.
Look, that record is impeccable. The odds are impeccable. It's very difficult to go against those odds, especially with the records that you've just
11 fights undefeated since 2018, since 2017.
That is a tear. That is a tear. So with that being said, and my preface, if you remember what I was talking about, Dana needing diversity and needing to put people into places where they can carve their own destiny. That's exactly what she's doing. Dana is doing rather with Natalia Silva. Is you've got an impeccable record, woman. You're going to fight against someone who has lost against the undisputed champion. So I can build something from that. I can build some credibility to you to say that you've beat someone that has been has fought against the champion. So it's all for her to take. It all looks like that. But, Vivian's got her, I'm pronouncing the surname, Araújo. Is that how you pronounce it?
I'm going with Araújo because it's Portuguese. I
stand
to be corrected, Vivian, if I'm getting it wrong.
I really apologize, Vivian. We'll get this right one day. But yeah, I'm going to call her Vivian. I know Dana doesn't like people being called by their name, so it's unprofessional, and we apologize for it. But she's got a point to prove. The cards are heavily stacked against her. She's lost against the current undisputed champion. She also wants her revenge one day. So she's got a point to prove. So there's definitely fight in her, and she wants to do something to this name that is, supposedly going to run over me, and beat me. I'm just a speed bump in this Natalia Silva's path, and that's how everybody's looking at me. And so when you go into a fight with nothing to lose, there's always something that can come out of that, from that. So I'm going to go the other side, despite, just to be like, the odds
You're going for the dog.
Yeah, 100%, man. I feel like my last two predictions have been sensible. Obviously the Temba one was passionate, but I'm gonna go for the dog here. I'm gonna go for Vivian, because I didn't know how to pronounce your surname. I'm making it up by backing you.
Look, honestly, that's a fight that I would say, if you want to put some underdog money on, if you're looking at some sort of parlay, definitely go with Vivian. I'm going to go with Natalia simply because that record, they're both Brazilian, which means that their BJJ is both going to be good.
Sure.
There's going to be lots of good grappling, decent striking, but it's probably going to go to decision, and I'm going to go with Natalia on that one. Then the next fight we have going slightly up is Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikov. Now, Randy Brown has been around for a while. This is an unranked fight at the welterweight division, of which Salikov is the favorite. And if I look at Randy Brown, he's actually got quite a bit of pedigree. He's lost to Jack Della Maddalena, who we know the UFC is backing as one of their new stars. He's also previously fought Vicente Luque, Brian Barberena. He's fought Nico Price. He's fought Bilal Muhammad. So he's actually a very pedigreed fighter within the UFC with a record of 17-5, which is not a bad record, facing Muslim Salikov, who has one of my favorite head kick wins, spinning kick on Andre Fialho. And I know that because Andre was the only Portuguese fighter in the UFC, and he just had to retire after that fight. Basically, he's out. He got cut, actually. So I'm looking forward to another head kick win from Muslim. But this is a very, very interesting fight. The fact that the odds are so heavily stacked in his favor, even though he's at a 19-4 record and Randy's at 17-5. It's heavily stacked in his favor. How do you see this welterweight fight going?
Look, Randy's got some good names under his belt. He's got some great experience. I mean, the resume that you've just told me now is a great resume for any fighter. If you think about fighters that get into the Hall of Fame, or in the sense that, like a Cowboy Cerrone, for example, those fighters, or like a Haitian Sensation, like the guys that always do the work and are always there to show up. And for UFC and for Dana, just going back to him as a fighter, the resume is impressive. Yes, he may have not had a successful path with some of the big names, but the resume is impressive, which means that he's got the experience to be able to run with the big dogs. And it's always the sort of case where when you've got that sort of experience, you become some sort of a gatekeeper to a certain extent, in a certain level, because when a fighter beats you, they earn credibility. You know what I mean? Because of your resume. So he's got a point to prove, Randy Brown. He's got a point to prove, in the sense that he wants to. As a fighter, you don't go into the fight wanting to lose. And yes, the odds are stacked against him, so he wants to win. But I think Muslim Salikov is a very, very good fighter. Is a very, very good fighter. He's got a mixed skill. Obviously, the Russian background takes him to. I must just think. Just remind me: is he sambo? Is he wrestling? Is he kickboxing?
I think he's sambo, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's where I'm going, but I just couldn't recall. And because of that, we all know what comes out of those parts of the world. The tenacity and the pressure and the ability to fight hard and fight well. So Muslim Salikov is in the pound seat to do what he needs to do here, to showcase his skills. And I think wherever it goes, despite Randy Brown wanting to do what he needs to do, wherever this fight goes, Muslim Salikov wins it. He's a tough fighter. He's a tough fighter. So whether you stand and bang with him, he's fine. Whether you want to wrestle with him, he's fine. And that's the problem that Randy Brown faces, unfortunately. I almost see it as a statement from Salikov, and puts him away, not quite first round, but maybe second round as well. I'm going to go second round KO as well, Salikov.
So interesting that you go KO, because Selikov does have a 68% KO finish rate, whereas Brown has an 85% decision rate. So basically, all his fights go to decision. So the question is, has he trained enough to be able to grind Salikov through in an entire 3 rounds? Because if that happens, chances are Brown might win. Because if you're a KO fighter, you're not really stacking up the points with the jabs and the combos here, just fighting through the fight. You're trying to get that KO because that's what you do. And if it goes the distance, chances are you might possibly not have done enough to get a decision. So it'll be quite interesting to see if Brown can actually grind Salikov for 3 rounds, get him to try and put the power shots, put in his blocks, and get in the strikes that he needs to get points. But I think I'm with you. Salikov, second round KO. That 68% is glaring in terms of his knockout rate.
I mean, to maybe add to what you're saying, yes, if you are Randy Brown and you are winning fights by decision, you are putting pressure on fighters, and you are doing the work. I don't think. Let me rather say he will have to prove me wrong and put Salikov on the back foot, and put pressure on Salikov and put his back on the cage and get him to fight on his back foot, which I think Salikov will not fight on his back foot. I think Salikov will go for it. In fact, it will be the other way around. Salikov will be the one who puts the pressure. He'll put him against the cage. He'll go for the strikes, and then he comes down for the takedowns, and then it becomes a ground and pound game, and then we know how that goes as well. So I see it as an emphatic, when Randy Brown can prove me wrong, and I will apologize, and I'll take my humble pie, but I think based on the pedigree of Muslim Salikov, he takes the W.
We're together on that one. The fight that comes after that, and we'll see how that then impacts that entire division, because obviously if we're considering the fact that the welterweight division is stacked and these guys are both unranked, you then ask the question, what next? Where do they go? But I guess that's a different conversation. The next fight on the card we're talking about is a lightweight bout between Renato Moicano and Drew Dober. Now, we all know about the Dober chin.
Joe Rogan. Pay me my money.
Moicano want money.
That's one hell of a guy, man. That's one hell of a guy, man. We love that guy. He's just such a character. He's such a character, such a interesting, person to just follow around. He's always just got that excitement behind him, and he's fun to watch. We're all excited for the fight, as you can see. The moods change the moment you started talking about, Moicano. Man, looking forward to it.
And what's interesting is the people he has lost to, not even his wins, because like you said, he's a very exciting fighter. He's got good pedigree, but the people he's lost to, the last 3, Rafael dos Anjos, one of a Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer, Rafael Fiziev, one of the most violent men in the division, Chan Sung-jung, another journeyman in the division, love him, Jose Aldo. So if you look at the names he's lost to, he's lost 4 losses. Those are his last 4 losses. He definitely has the skill to not only get good fights, but also because he's a late notice fighter. Like I think the fight where he said he needs to be paid, he took the fight on 5 days notice. He was sitting in Brazil drinking beer.
I was sitting in Brazil eating steaks, drinking beer, Joe Rogan.
But he still takes the fights. He's beat Cub Swanson, who the UFC loves. He's beat Chase Hooper. He's beat Brad Riddell. I'm not a big Brad Riddell fan after he got kicked in the head and got frozen up against the cage. But
man.
And then he had a canceled bout against Arman Tsarukyan. Now, with that pedigree, fighting against who we see is probably a prospect in the UFC, Drew Dober, how do you see it going?
Look, my heart again here for Moicano, because I love the guy, but to your point, the pedigree, his experience in the cage, he wants to make a name for himself. And again, Dana will put you in a position where you can, carve your own destiny. He's a co-main because he can pull people to watch this fight. Drew Dober is a good fighter, is a great fighter in actual fact. Or let's say good. Let's say he's a good fighter. He still has to kind of prove himself. He's done well to get here, and he fights well. He fights efficiently. He's aggressive. He puts pressure on people. And so Moicano's going to have to deal with that. He's going to have to deal with a very strong opposition because Drew Dober is very strong. You put up against the cage as well. He's like, he can actually outmuscle Renato Moicano, I think, if it gets to that. But obviously Moicano's got the experience as well. It's a very interesting fight. It's very difficult to call, to be honest. Despite the fact that I like Moicano, it's a very difficult fight to call. So if I look at the skill sets of each and the experience, call it, Moicano has the edge on that. But I think Drew Dober's hungry here. Drew Dober needs to get a dub to kind of accelerate his path. I mean, he's been stagnant for quite a while. I just can't recall the last time I watched a very good Drew Dober fight where he's actually performing and actually winning emphatically, although he's got the skill set. So he wants to make a statement here. He wants to make a statement against the guy that's running his mouth, that's the popular guy. So it's a tricky one. I'm still literally thinking about it as I'm speaking to you about how to call it. His record, 27-12-0. He's got a lot of fights under his belt. Moicano is 17-5-1. So, Drew Dober can get the job done. He's got 27 dubs. We know that. We've seen it in his record. And I think because of the fact that he wants to prove a point against the big talking Renato Moicano, I'm gonna give it to Drew Dober. It's a call that I don't want to make because I love Moicano. I love the guy. I mean, you saw how excited I got. But Drew Dober wants to get something done here and wants to do it emphatically. He's got some holes in his fight game, which Renato can take advantage of. He's, the stuff that goes, slicing in, through the guards or the tapes or the uppercuts that's where I think Renato Moicano has got a chance. And if he doesn't get him there, then I think Renato Moicano loses the fight.
Since we went through Moicano's record slightly, I'm just going to go through some of that. So, by the way, both of them are both 4-1 in their last 5 fights. So they have essentially an identical current record. Drew Dober's last loss was to Steamroller Matt Frivola, who's out of what's it called? Sterling's gym. But he's also recently beat Bobby Green and Terrence McKinney, but also lost to Brad Riddell. And like I said, Brad, I'm sorry, but looking at that, I'm with you. It's very difficult to call, but I'm going to go with the slight dog here. I'm going to go with Moicano because he's usually a late notice fighter. Give him a full camp. I think he can do something. Against Frivola, Dober's chin finally got tested. We all thought Drew Dober had an uncrackable chin and his chin got cracked. So I'm going to go with Moicano by decision.
Yeah, I can see it because, again, as I said, I could go either way here. I can see that because it's going to be a tough fight. I mean, he's got a full camp, Moicano, therefore he can go the 3 rounds. Moicano will want to put on a show. He'll want to do something for the fans because, again, backing up the mouth, the big talking. It can
and
go
wanting
that
the money,
way.
I'm sure, right?
Yeah, man, it can go.
Fight of the
way.
night.
Again, I can't disagree with anybody's, where this fight will sway. It can. It's a very tricky one. I'm still, as you can see, I'm still kind of like, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm really on the fence. Obviously, it's not going to be a draw that we know. Well, you never know, but I highly unlikely. So I'm still going to stick to Drew Dober.
Yeah, I'm gonna buck the trend because one of the other podcasters we have out here is like, listen, this fight doesn't even make sense. It's judo all the way. But I think Moicano, between his 59% submission rate and his 41% decision rate, he's never had a knockout, by the way, in his UFC career, Moicano, versus Dober's 56% knockout rate. I think I want to go with Moicano. So yeah, we're gonna go opposite directions on this one.
Yeah.
Then the fight of the
good.
night, the main card, the one that we're looking forward to, Roman Dolidze versus Nasruddin Imanov. Middleweight bout. We know the middleweight division right now is very, very active. We've got Jamal Hill, who I saw a post on Twitter today saying he's one of the most sensitive champions. We love you, Jamal Hill. We hope you can get more knockouts like the Johnny Walker knockout. But this division is starting to get very, very active. I think Izzy was the champion for so long that we kind of forgot about everyone else. It's like, oh, okay, middleweight division, great. Izzy, we know what's happening. But now that he's no longer the champion, we have a new champion in the form of Dricus du Plessis. Yes, he might be facing Izzy or whoever is number 1, 2, whatever the case is. But now the division has the opportunity to start to gain some momentum for some of these lower ranked fighters. So number 8 versus number 11, I think it's a perfect timing for this middleweight bout. How do you see this one going?
To your point, we are starting to see some good activity in the division. There's a couple of things that have happened in the division, as you've said, that have seriously shifted the momentum of where this, where the division is. We've seen some cuts. Why am I forgetting the guy's name? The wrestler. He's been cut. He's now at the PFL. Derek Brunson. Derek Brunson, has left the division. Obviously now. He's fighting with another institution. So there's been a lot of movement, and because of that, there's gaps to be filled in the middleweight division. And that's probably why, Dana puts this as a main card. It's two exciting fighters. Imanov is a very aggressive fighter. He wants to get the job done. He wants to get the job done quickly. Whereas Roman Dolidze kind of is an artist, kind of takes his time about how he goes about things. The fight the little that I have watched, he's got a good record, 12-2. Imanov is 12-4. So the records are pretty much there or thereabout. Dolidze is actually has fought in a couple of weight classes, and so has Imanov. So they kind of settled here, it seems, and they're kind of trying to make their path in this specific weight class. Dolidze, I think if I recall, is it AKA? I just want to make sure that my facts are right. Yeah, he's been at AKA and Extreme Couture. So those are big gyms. Those are two very big gyms. So he's definitely been training with the best of the best in the business. And so because of that, and his approach to fighting as an artist, violent but an artist in his trade, I'm going to go with Roman Dolidze for the W, but it's a decision. I think he'll be able to grind it out again just because of how he fights. He'll be able to grind him out. So it's either my prediction. It's either Roman Dolidze by decision, or Imanov by KO. Because Imanov is aggressive. He is going to want to fight. He's going to want to get the job done. But I think because it's a 5-rounder, he may pace himself and try to get looks and try to have an endurance about him. But that's not his style of fighting, if I recall. So now you're putting yourself in a position where you're trying to save yourself for 5 rounds, and you're trying to be patient, but that's not your fighting style. And in there, you get compromised because you're not fighting the way you used to. So I'm seeing it going towards Roman Dolidze by decision.
It's such a tight fight, this one. So it's Roman, by the way. His moniker is the Caucasian Dolidze versus the Russian sniper Imanov.
Yeah.
So Imanov, like you said, look, he's 4-2 right now in the UFC. Dolidze is 6-2 in the UFC. They're both very aggressive, angry. For some reason, Dolidze has a lot of cancelled bouts in his past. I don't really know what that's about, but he's recently beat Jack Hermanson and Kyle Dorcas and Phil Hawes. In terms of his skill and in terms of where this fight, I see it going. I see definitely a finish from either side. Why? Because Imanov has a knockout rate of, oh, sorry about that, has a knockout rate of 45%. Dolidze has a knockout rate of 58%. Submission rate, 36%. Imanov, 25%. Dolidze. If you look at it, they only have an 8. Yeah, they finished their fights. They made sure they finished their fights. So for that reason, I'm going with a submission for Imanov, who is the dog in this fight. He's the slight underdog in this fight. I'm going to go with him by submission in the third.
I mean, it's not a bad call. It's not a bad call. It's not a bad call in the sense that, again, he's a pressure fighter. He's a fighter that's aggressive. He'll want to go forward and put on the pressure, but again, have that endurance for 5 rounds. And if he hasn't, like, remember when you're fighting your first 5-round fight and you're inexperienced in it, at some point, if you're feeling your body's not up to getting it to 5, you want to get it done quite quickly and in the 3-round space. So that's why the round 3 for me kind of makes sense, because you still are yourself and you still can kind of get it within, your framework of how you fight. And the submission makes sense because, he can wear Dolidze down. He can catch him with something. But I don't know. I don't quite see Roman Dolidze being the guy who gets knocked out cold and like it's a KO. He's very durable. He's got a chin, and if you hurt him, you need to almost go for a submission. And that's why I think your prediction also makes sense. I'm still going to go with Roman by decision, taking him to deep waters, Imanov, because you're an aggressive fighter. We take you to deep waters. We do the volume work. We be efficient about how we go about things. Still wanting to hurt people, yes, and still wanting to get the job done if there's an opportunity. But because Imanov is also wanting to prove a point, it'll be a decision, but it will be a split decision, I think.
So you're going Imanov split decision?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Look, we've both gone for the dog in that one. Sorry, he's not the dog in this one. Sorry, he's actually the... who are you? What are... Yeah, he's minus 196, so he's the favorite in this one. So I think we both looking at the favorite. Dolidze we respect. It's just there's something about Imanov in this fight that just feels like he's going to be able to do it. That is the main bout. So I think let's just run through the entire card. Once again, I'll pick. So Dolidze versus Imanov. I'm going for Imanov.
Dolidze.
Moicano Dober. I'm Moicano.
I'm Dober.
Brown Salikov. Salikov here.
Yeah, we'll both win Salikov on this one.
Head kick for the win, baby. Let's go, Muslim.
Yeah.
Vivian Arajo versus Natalia Silva.
I can't remember which one I went for.
You went with Vivian because you're like, listen, I couldn't pronounce your surname, so.
Oh yeah. Yes, you're right. That's the reason. Because I remember the stats being overwhelmingly. So I'm like, did I go for her? No, I went for Vivian because I couldn't pronounce her surname. And I'm saying it again, Vivian. I trust your instincts, and you're going to win this one for us.
And she's the biggest dog on the card, so if you get that, like that's a good win.
Oh man, I better put a parlay on something.
And the 2 fights to round up the main card that we didn't talk about is the Alishkab Kizarev versus Makhmud Muradov fight at middleweight. Who do you have there? Now, it's Russia versus Uzbekistan. Odds have it minus 1922 plus 160. So the dog in this instance is the Uzbekistani Muradov.
I mean, Kizarev is 14-0. He's on a tear, obviously. The experienced fighter is Muradov. He's got 26-8. So it's one of those. another middleweight fight where someone can make a name for himself, and Kizriev can put himself there to make a name for himself, and that's why I'll go with him.
I'm with you. I think I have enough dogs on my on my list. I'm going to go with Kirizev as well.
Yeah.
Gilbert Urbina versus Charles Ratke.
Yeah, both inexperienced
Welterweight.
fighters, relatively. Yeah, 7-3, Gilbert Urbina, Charles Radke, 8-3, pretty similar records. I think I don't know the fighters, to be completely honest. But I'll take a chance on Gilbert Urbina. Let's
Ooh.
go.
So I'm gonna go with the name that. So both names are somewhat recognizable, but I do know Charles Ratke, and he has a 60% knockout rate. So I'm going with Charles.
Okay, let's see how that goes.
To the prelims, McCann versus Belbita. I went Belbita, right? Yeah, I
Yeah,
went Belbita.
and I went McCann.
Oof, I went with the heavy underdog. Am I crazy? She's like a plus 215 underdog. Wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Then the next fight on the prelims is Azat Maksum from Kazakhstan versus Charles Johnson from the United States in a Mosca bout. I have no idea what Mosca is, but for some reason my UFC page is in Spanish. So yeah.
Sorry, my brother. I don't know. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, something's wrong. Something went with my audio there. You saw my camera went weird. Something went wonky with my audio. Let me just try and sort it out. Give me a moment.
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me? Hello? I cannot be heard. So
yeah, for some reason I've lost you on audio.
I can hear you.
Let me just maybe try get off the.
Okay, so whilst he's taking a break there, we have the fight that I'm talking about now. We've got the Kazakhstani Azat Maksum versus Charles Johnson from the States.
I'm so sorry about this.
It's
just gone.
17-0. Lou will be back shortly. 17-0 versus Charles Johnson, who has a UFC record of 13-6. So I'm definitely going with the Kazakhstani in this instance, simply because of his record. 17-0, you cannot turn your nose up to. That's a good record. And we know that the Kazakhstani is always very, very hard. We've got Shavkat Rakhmonov. He's one of those very, very hard Kazakhstanis that we have in the UFC. So basing the 17-0 record plus the country, I'm definitely going with Maksum in that prelim bout. Then we have Temba Gorimbo versus Pete Rodriguez, the fight that we talked rather in depth about at the beginning of this, where Temba, homegrown from Africa, Zimbabwean, fighting former EFC champion in South Africa, welterweight bout between him and Pete Rodriguez. Odds have Temba minus 245, plus 200 on the dog, Pete Rodriguez, and we both went, Lou and I both went Temba Gorimbo, and that's going to be a heck of a fight. Looking forward to the rest of his career after this emphatic win. Yes, I said it, emphatic. It's going to be an emphatic win, definitely. Lou is back. Lou, you back.
Guys, my apologies for that. You know how it is, technology. So yeah, Molly McCann, I went Azad Maksum, and then I went Temba Gorimbo.
So we are together on those last two fights. Yeah, then the other one is Jong Yong Lee versus Blake Builder.
Featherweight fight, interesting fight. But to try make a quick prediction, Lee Jong Yong, I'm gonna go with him.
10-1-0 versus 8-1-1. Okay, we're happy with that. I think I'm gonna go with it's a tough one. I'm gonna go with Jong Yong Lee as well. So we're together on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, then the next fight is Luana Carolina versus Julia Stoliarenko. Women's flyweight. Yes. 9-4 versus 10-8.
I'm going to go with Stoliarenko by finish. Sub.
Oof, a 91% sub rate says that it's likely to happen. There's obviously no odds on this one, but I like the Brazilian simply because she's Brazilian. We always like Brazilians, but Lithuania, we know Lithuania's got some good fighters. We've got Rose Namajunas, who's obviously originally Lithuanian.
Yeah.
So, and Sterilenko, as much as her record doesn't quite say it, she is a very good fighter. It's not the first fight we've seen from her. So I'm going to go with Luana Carolina because of Brazil in this instance, to be honest. Yeah, I'm going with Carolina. Then the last two fights we've got is Landon Quinons versus Markel Mendros, lightweights.
Yeah.
I'm going with Landon.
I'm gonna go with the assassin Markel Mederos.
Because he's murderous?
Yep.
Okay, you're going to go the murderous one. So on this one, we differ. Okay, awesome. And then the last fight of the night on the prelims is one of the scariest men I've ever seen, or so someone said on Twitter, Thomas Peterson versus Jamal Pogues. Who you got there? 1-0 versus 10-4. Oof.
Scary guy.
Heavyweight bout. We all love the heavyweights.
Yeah, but this is the thing with heavyweights; it can go either way. It's one and done there. But I think Thomas Peterson's got an opportunity to make a name for himself here
on debut.
It's a KO.
KO debut KO. Okay, I like that. That's a big call. KO debut versus 10-4. But if you're 10-4 and you're still the first fight on the prelims, that says a lot. So I'm going to go with you with Thomas Peterson debut, first card, first fight on the prelims. I think that's where we got it.
Nice.
And that is the prediction show for Dolidze versus Imanov happening tonight, 4th of February. If you're in South Africa or in Africa in general, if you're in the States, it's on the 3rd of February tonight. Everyone watch. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe at Headkickpod on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch. We're everywhere. Looking forward to seeing you guys again. Kick him in the head! Because that's how we like to do it.
Take care, brother. Lovely to be
Thank
here.
you so much for coming in, Lou. If people want to find you on socials, where can they find you?
I'm a very private guy on all my socials. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it. Find me here. Find me commenting on the Headkick podcast. Find me commenting on the Instagram page here. That's where you find me, and we'll talk more fights. I'm down to. I'm a comment guy. I can be in the comments, and we can have a conversation, and we can see how you differ with my predictions.
Awesome, Lou. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for listening. Out.
Take care, brother. All the best.